Hello, and welcome to the No Purpose Without Love podcast. I am your host, Dave Guresso, where we learn here how to lead well, live on purpose, and honor God with our lives. Today, I have with me our guest, Miss Kim Granata-Clark. Kim is a certified applied ergonomist. I'm saying it wrong. Help me out, Kim. Ergonomist, and received a certification as a remote ergonomics assessment specialist in 2020. She has a master's degree in human factors and ergonomics and bachelor's degree in occupational therapy from San Jose State University in California. Kim has conducted ergonomic evaluations as an ergonomic specialist for close to 20 years in many Silicon Valley, California companies, and looking forward to serving in Tampa, Florida. Kim loves to find ways to reduce or prevent discomfort in a client's work area. On a personal note, Kim has been married for 24 years with an 8-year-old daughter. She's a ballroom dancer, and she and her husband ran a ballroom dance ministry at their church in California. Kim used to teach ballroom dance classes at a couple community centers in her local area in California as well. Kim, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
So as I always like to kick off these episodes, I always want to start off with the story. I think everybody has a story. You have a story. How did you get to where you are, and what even got you into ergonomics?
Well, I have a bachelor's degree in occupational therapy, and actually my father was the one that suggested to me to get into the field of ergonomics. So he must have read up on it, kind of felt that the two go together, which they do. I don't work in a clinic, but I do work with people in their offices, home offices, virtual offices, and actually their businesses too. So I thought it was a nice fit, and really enjoy going with it.
Awesome. And so you have a lot of passion, and that's cool that your dad encouraged you, right? You have a lot of passion behind this. The conversations that I've had with you and some of the things we've talked about, you demonstrate that very clearly, that this is extremely important to you. What is it about ergonomics that's essential, right? Out at work, at home. I think about it even as I sit right now. I don't think that I'm ergonomically correct, actually. But why is it so important for us to care?
Ergonomics, if you don't have the right posture while you're working on the computer, you're going to start having back pain, neck pain. If you're always staring at your laptop, sitting in coffee shops and looking down at your laptop, over time, injuries happen over time. It's not something that just hits you right then and there. It's a needle in a haystack. So I'd love to work with people, make sure that they're set up at their workstation, because a lot of us are working from home. A lot of us are working in awkward positions. And I want people to not be going to their doctor and the chiropractors all the time. Not that I'm trying to take money away from them, but at least try to have good posture while you're sitting at your computer and working on your workstation.
And I'm certain that COVID played a huge role in how that has evolved over time. So what have you run into now since COVID started and more people started working at home? Has that been a challenge?
It has been a challenge because people don't have their equipment that they had at their office. Now they're at home with not the equipment that they bought. Some employees allowed them to take their chair home, allowed them to take their keyboard and mouse home. Some did not. And so they were left with whatever they had at home and to go out and buy products that they don't know much about. And so, yes, COVID had people staying at home sitting on their couch, sitting in their bed, sitting at just a desk with 4 legs, nothing special.
Yeah. And so what are, let's say somebody's out there struggling right now, like what is maybe a step or two immediately that you say they could take to start moving in the right direction?
First and foremost, stand more during your day. We sit too long. Put a timer on your computer, on your watch, and stand every hour. Even if it's for 10 to 15 minutes, even if it's a micro break, just stand and get moving. If you're on the phone, you're on a conference call, you don't have to be on the computer. Step away and stand up and walk around your office, walk around the area that you're at, and not be sitting.
Excellent. I love that. I think having those desks too that raise up certainly help, because even now, like I want to stand, but I feel like I'm going to be looking down too much.
Hmm.
So yeah, great. That's great. I believe that just experience in the past has shown me that, yeah, getting up and getting on your feet, it even brings a little bit of energy to the
Hmm.
situation that maybe is lacking otherwise.
Hmm.
So let's shift direction just a little bit. You're a person of faith. Talk about your relationship with Jesus and how has that impacted your journey so far as an ergonomic specialist?
Well, it's a great question. I moved out here to Florida a couple years ago from California. I was working for a couple companies out there, being an ergonomic evaluator, being the top evaluator out there at some of those companies. And I came here to Florida, and not many people have heard the word ergonomics, don't know what it means, or they know about it but haven't heard the word itself. So I had a lot of growing to do, and God has really stretched me, and I want to give up a lot, many times, but I just keep praying about it and hoping that I'm following his direction. I'm hoping that what he's giving me is the tools to build my own business. Unfortunately, I haven't yet found a job in ergonomics, so why don't I just start my own company and build from there? So it's been a lot of stepping stones, and he's been there, making the steps and helping me up that ladder.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is challenging. That's one of the things that we don't talk about enough is, with entrepreneurialism too, is the challenges, the ups and downs, that sort of that emotional roller coaster that entrepreneurs go through as they're developing something, and is not for the faint of heart. You and I have
Mm-hmm.
talked about that. And I think a lot of times out there we talk about social media and the highlight reels that get posted. It's easy to see from the outside looking in, like, look how great they're doing. But at the same time, we know on the back end, we're struggling with how do we do this marketing and how do we put this out there, and who's my target market? Who's gonna see that, right? And so that's just it's a thing for entrepreneurs. So it's a great segue into the next part of what I want to talk about. And maybe let's start here with family, right? Because you have a family and you're trying to build a business. And so as you struggle through those emotional ups and downs, what's that been like for you as an entrepreneur with a family?
It's been a struggle. Luckily, my daughter is 8 years old, so she's at school. So I have good 8 to 2:30 to get my work done, and my husband and I trade off going and picking her up from school. So my job is pretty much done at 2:30, and then come pick her up, bring her home, and then maybe try to get another hour in while she kind of de-stresses, from being at school. School can't be stressing, right? But it probably is.
It can
um,
be.
so so yeah, I mean, just being there. And then I also have a father-in-law that lives about 15 minutes away from me, and so sometimes I have to take him to doctor's appointments. Sometimes something comes up, so you work, and your business keeps going, but you need to run with it. If doctor's appointments come up, or you just the kid is sick, you just have to run with it, and you might not get in an 8-hour day. You might have to work a 10-hour day in order to get your 8 hours. And maybe do a little bit on the weekends and such like that. So it is a challenge. I'm not a full-time employee, full-time working on my business. So I value my family. I value being a mom, and being a wife. And sometimes I just let it go, and my business will always be there, and always there's something to work on my business. But family is really important to me too.
It is, and I love that you have that heart posture, Kim. That you put your family first, because not in every situation that's not always the case, right? And
No.
so I know that your daughter knows that she's loved because of it.
Hmm.
And one of the benefits that you point out is the flexibility, right, of
Yeah.
being a business owner. Is it does afford us the flexibility to make decisions that align with the other parts of our lives. And I think what we're going to discover, you and I both, with our families as we go down this journey, is right. We're going to learn things from the business that we're going to be able to help our children grow up with the wisdom and knowledge that we've gained. And then they're going to learn some things, and we're probably going to learn right back from them. I already noticed that happening. Right. But
Good.
so talk about, you talked about kind of having down days, I think at one point. What kind of things do you do when the going gets tough?
Oh boy. Cry. I just try to find try to find something that motivates me, something that makes me feel fulfilled, and find something to do in my business that fulfills me.
Yeah, so it's getting recharged and finding that thing that even used to inspire you, maybe that you lost sight of, right?
Yeah.
And then reigniting yourself with that.
Mm-hmm.
So can you think of some ways in which some things that do inspire you that way? Like what does that for you? How do you really reignite that fire, so to speak?
I go out for walks. I walk around our neighborhood, think about things. I listen to Christian music. I listen to music in general, and just sometimes I try to get out in the mornings before I start my day, get out for a walk. Doesn't happen all the time. But that gives me juvenation and gives me going for the day and gets me thinking about, what's the next thing for my business? Where do I need to go? And I am in many networking groups. So the networking groups kind of give me a high and helps me to grow. But I don't compare myself to other people, but I try to learn from other people on how they're running their business, what they're doing that's working for them, and maybe try it for myself. So sometimes I go to these networking meetings and just like, here it is, another meeting. But I also do pray and say, okay, Lord, just open my eyes and my ears to what you have for me in this meeting. And boy, sometimes he does it, and it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, he does every time. There's been countless times where I don't know what to say, right? I've been in these meetings and it's surrounded by people, and I almost start to feel a little discouraged and intimidated by what's
Yeah.
being said or how I'm even going to fit into the conversation. And I will say that exact prayer right in that moment. And strangely, they'll still look at me, they'll say, Dave, what do you think? And all this stuff just comes out. I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about that 5 seconds ago.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
exactly.
But that's good, right? So I'm hearing you talk about taking a walk, and there's something else I want to say about that in a second, but also the wisdom that we gain from others who have gone before us. One of
Yes.
the things my wife was telling me recently is that when we're struggling or we feel stuck, a lot of times the way forward is to go reach out to somebody that's already where you want to be and listen
Yeah.
to the wisdom and insight that they share, because often they'll help us get unstuck because they bring to life or reveal things that you're not currently seeing because they've already walked down that path and seen sort of those proverbial landmarks that are out there that maybe we haven't even got that far down that path to see it. Right. So that's good. That's a gold nugget. But as far as taking the walk, I love the scientific aspects of how our mind works. And so I'll share this little tidbit for those listening. Inside our brain, right, we have this limbic system, which really deals with our emotions. And then there's this prefrontal cortex. It's the part of the brain that sits right here at the front of your skull. That is the part that deals more with the logic and the creativity and some of our ability to sort through some of the struggles or particularly the complex decisions that we make, especially as business owners. A lot of times when we're having that down day or we're struggling emotionally, or maybe things happen in and around us, right, that are causing that, it fires up that limbic system and our emotions start running rampant. And for those of us who maybe have some really difficult things that we're battling with, that can almost override the operating aspects of the prefrontal cortex. But by taking a walk, like you're talking about, Kim, what a lot of people don't realize is that it starts getting blood flowing again, and it actually begins to move that into that prefrontal cortex and cause us to start getting some of that sort of logical mind back, and it lessens some of the heavy emotion that might be getting in the way of our creativity. So I think this is something I've learned recently that I have found to be effective. And so when you said that, it's like, yes, that's huge, right? Especially when you're feeling that down day or you're discouraged, get out there, take a walk, go do some exercise.
Right.
And you will probably realize that by the time you get back, the thing you maybe felt stuck on or you were so caught up in your head, it's a little bit easier now to get out of your head and start moving forward with the project or whatever it is that you're working on.
That is so true. So true. Definitely so.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So what else do you do that sort of balances the load? Because you had talked a lot too about there's things going on with the family, there's things going on with the business, and I'm sure you've got other things outside of those two categories in your community. How do you best balance that load on a day-to-day basis, or is there such thing as balance?
Oh yeah, that's a controversial topic. Is there balance between life and work, and between personal life and business life? I'm a note taker. I take notes. If something comes to mind, I write it down on my pad of paper. And I, like, at night, I try to write down things that I'm going to do the next day, something I want to accomplish. And I'm a check mark person. I love to check things off and that I've got things done. So trying to find that balance. I feel like, lately I've been out of balance. I spend more time on my personal side versus trying to work on my business. So I just tell myself, okay, I need to work on one thing for my business every single day. And so when I write my notes, what I want to accomplish or the day of the actual day, I write down, hey, I want to work on my website today. But I keep it open. I don't say specifically, I want to work on this. I kind of like, I want to work on my website, not like, oh, I want to work on my about page. But note taking notes, thinking about what I want to accomplish for the day, and then look back at the end of the day and say, hey, look at all the things I've accomplished. And then I feel a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, well, one of the great things too about taking notes and creating a list is it gets it out of your head, because sometimes it can be really scattered in there. So that's kind of like the nugget I get from that is like, wow, like how can I clear or declutter my mind?
Yes.
It's simple. Just get it out on paper, and then you don't have to constantly try to remember it all the time.
That is so true. I'm only getting older. I keep forgetting things. So you got to get it on paper.
You and me both, Kim. I'm noticing it day by day. And I've heard as I move, I'm in my early to mid 40s now, but as I move into my latter 40s, I heard it gets worse. So looking forward to that. But the other thing that you said, right, is sometimes just taking one step, right, is moving forward. And I know sometimes it can seem a little daunting, right? To what do I do? I'm not even sure what to do. Or I have this list of like 50 things, but I only have a 10 thing space. How do I move through that? Well, the truth is if we do nothing, we never move at all. It's like, imagine if I want to take a step from here to that door across the room from me. If I don't take any steps, I'm never going to move towards it. But even if I take one step, I'm definitely a little bit closer to that door. And it kind of reminds me of a principle that John Maxwell, he's a sort of a leadership coach and expert that I follow. And he talked about it in terms of swinging an axe at a tree. Okay. If you take 5 swings every day at a tree with an axe, eventually what's going to happen? Tree's going to fall. But here's the thing. We don't even care how big that tree is. If it's a little twig, it might only take one whack, right? But if it's huge and I can't even wrap my arms around it, regardless, if I take 5 whacks at that tree every single day, it may take 5 days, it may take 5 weeks, it may take 5 months, maybe even 5 years if the tree's big enough. But one thing is certain, eventually, if I do that without ever stopping, it's going to happen. And in many ways, that's how we have to tackle the bigger goals, right? Is make the list, get it out of your head and take at least one step. Let's just do something today.
Mm-hmm. So true.
All right, so let's talk about teaching ballroom classes. That's something that you're definitely into. Tell us a little bit more about that. How'd you get into ballroom class teaching, and why do you love it, and what kind of things have you learned from that experience?
Yes, I love to ballroom dance. So I took some dance classes at San Jose State University, and eventually I met my husband there, and he proposed to me on the dance floor.
Oh, wow.
So it was, and then eventually my husband and I competed together, and eventually I started taking lessons. I also started giving lessons. And we ran a ballroom dance ministry at our church. And that was very successful for a good 20 years before COVID shut us down. And then we ended up moving out here to Florida. And I hope to start a ballroom dance ministry out here at our church, or maybe an adjoining church or so. But teaching dance lessons can be very similar to doing an office ergonomics presentation. I still have a group in front of me. I still need to teach. I teach dance moves in the dance classes, but I'm teaching posture in a presentation, or if I'm doing a one-on-one with someone, I'm teaching posture. I'm teaching, how to sit up straight. If you go to my website and the about page, it talks about dancers don't slouch when you dance. You don't slouch when you dance, right? You have to keep up, especially if you're doing waltz, foxtrot, and tango. You have to stand up. So same thing with ergonomics, same thing with office ergonomics. You have to sit up. You can't work like this all the time. Eventually, you're going to have neck discomfort, back discomfort. So by teaching dance lessons, and I'd like to continue doing that. I love teaching. Also, when you're teaching dance lessons, not everyone is going to get what you're saying. So not to put down the seniors in our life, it just doesn't compute sometimes. So I have to change my way of teaching. Maybe don't teach that step, but teach another step that's very similar. Okay, instead of doing this, why don't you just turn this way? But when I'm teaching, I'm doing an office ergonomics presentation, or I'm doing an evaluation. I just make sure that people understand what I'm talking about, why I'm recommending a piece of equipment. And if it doesn't work out for them in the end, I need to pivot. Okay, that document holder was too big for your desk, and I forgot to think about the depth of your desk. Okay, let's go with this document holder. So like dancing, like teaching, like doing my presentations or even my evaluations, I need to pivot. I need to find what works for everyone, because they say, there's visual learners out there, there's kinesthetic learners, and I don't know the other two, which you probably already do. But kinesthetic learner is great for dancing. Visual auditory learner, sorry, I forgot about that. And so there's all the different kinds of learners. So you have to teach to different people's learning styles.
Yeah, it's an iterative approach too, right? Is what I hear. As you learn, you continue to improve upon what you learn, right? And that's what I hear you saying. Whether regardless of style or the actual setup or whatever it is, right? As we evolve, or as we learn new data, if you will, that's when we're actually choosing a different path or a different step to move it forward and get better. So ergonomics isn't just a one and done, right? It's a matter of sitting down, assessing the situation, looking back, saying, what can we learn from this? Let's make it better, and then come back and repeat that process all over again. Yeah,
exactly. So true.
And what's cool too is you've also, it sounds like, learned to put a couple different of those two passions that you have together. You love dancing, right? And you love ergonomics, and you found a way to kind of put those things together, which is really cool.
Definitely so.
Cool. All right. So this is another thing. Whenever somebody's been married a long time, I love talking about that, right? Because it's a very family, marriage, parenting. These topics are very, very important to me. I've been married over 20 years myself. I have 4 kids. And so I always love hearing the wisdom that gets shared on these podcast episodes as well. So maybe start off, just share with us some wisdom that you have. Like, what does it take to have a successful marriage as a person who's been married 24 years yourself?
Communicate, communicate, communicate. You
Mm-hmm.
have to communicate with your significant other. You need to communicate within your family. It's not perfect. We all in our marriages have had challenges in our marriages. We work on different levels. We talk in different levels. We handle things differently, and you have to give grace to your partner. And also, you need to know the whole story. You need to know where they're coming from before you react to it, which I have problems with. I go instead of stepping back. Okay, why did you make that decision? Why did you choose, to do that? So I think communication is really important. Within our marriage, I said divorce is not a thing. We're going to work through it, and whatever it takes. If it means going to a marriage counselor and talking it over with a marriage counselor, do it. But I think just communicating, just hearing each other out, and if something's bothering you, communicate it. Say something to your partner. Yes, I do it too. You fester inside, you get frustrated about something, you don't want to say anything, don't want to say anything, but then at some point you're going to explode, and it's even a worse situation than if you just handled it when it started to bother you. So um, communicating, I think, is really hard. And I think even personally in my marriage, we moved a couple years ago. Our marriage has changed from when we lived in California to where we live in Florida. I mean, it's just different. Communication is different, living in different places, both trying to look for a job at the same time, I just have one daughter, and we have one daughter. So marriages change throughout the year. I started talking to some other friends of mine who have, longer marriages, and I asked them, what's wrong with us? Why is it, and they felt the same thing. They went through a lull in their marriage that, it just, things happen. It's not perfect. We're not perfect. Marriages aren't perfect, but like we said earlier, one step at a time, one connection at a time, one conversation at a time.
Yeah, and that was the first thing I thought when you said it's changing, and I said, does it ever? I was thinking in my head, does it ever stop changing? Right? Because it's a constant evolution. That's been my experience as well. And it does it just like that roller coaster with building a business. Building a life works the same way, right?
Yes,
Especially
yes.
with another person. And you said so much there, Kim. I don't think I could keep up with all the things that were going off in my mind. But one big one you said is communicate when you are holding on to something.
Yeah.
That one will really get you if you don't, right? And it has the potential to create real problems in a marriage when we hold on to the stuff. But the real question that I think needs to be asked when that happens is, what is the cause of the person, either side or both sides, wanting to hold on to that? A lot of times it comes back to a history of some sort. When I said this, this happened. Or when I didn't say this, this happened, right? Or if I can even, dare I say, control the situation by saying or not saying this or that, then I can avoid this from happening, right? And we play these little mental games. And in the end, all we're doing is we're breaking down that level of closeness with our spouse, right? And that actually degrades the relationship, especially if you're talking about doing this over years and years and years. But there is one other thing that you said, Kim, and if you have anything to add, please feel free to stop me and add in. But the word grace that you said, I do not believe that everybody listening even understands, what does that even mean? So break that down for us. Like, what do you mean by giving grace?
Just letting people letting your spouse tell them their point of the story, where they're going with their, why they made the certain decision, why are, when you're deciding what are you going to do this weekend, well, you give them grace. Okay, you hear what they have to say, here's what I will have to say, and then okay, this weekend, why don't you go, let's go with what you want to do this weekend, and then maybe next weekend we can go, we can go hit that errand I wanted to go do or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't give grace to each other, then it's going to be a constant battle to each other.
Yeah, it comes down to, I had a conversation yesterday about listening and the importance of listening.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we don't do a good job at that. We can't even get to the point to give the grace because we haven't even heard.
Yes. So. Listening is so hard. My pet peeve is being interrupted. Because, people are, I get it. When you're having a conversation, you're trying to think of the next thing you want to say, but then I get interrupted and I couldn't finish my thought. So yes, listening is very hard. I'm trying to teach that to my daughter. She interrupts all the time. So it's really, trying to find that time that someone talks, you listen. And then what do they say? You have one mouth and 2 ears?
2 ears.
So
there's a reason for that, right? So good. So yeah, listening is a huge part of grace. In order to, I think it really comes down to understanding the other side, and this isn't just in the context of marriage. This is in the context of conflict in general.
Yeah. Yes.
When we're doing this, like you said, ultimately what that is, that's a conflict presenting itself. In order to move through that, it's really difficult if I'm not willing to listen so that I can understand the other person's point of view, right? And once I begin to understand, now I can address what it is that they're feeling or what it is that they're saying, and maybe we have a better shot at overcoming the conflict. So, All right. So as we wrap up, Kim, if you were to go back and just start over, this is a question I've been asking everybody in all my interviews. And thanks to my good friend Donna Edmond, who I spoke to several episodes ago, who gave me this idea. If you could go back and speak to your 20-year-old self, using all that you've learned and all the wisdom you've gained since then, what would you say?
Be bold. Get out there. Do what you want to do. Don't ask questions. Take as many classes as you can. Be with people. Just be a constant learner. I put that as my New Year's resolution for the last couple of years. Be bold, because I can be shy. I don't want to ask questions, but being bold, stepping out of my comfort zone and get out there in the world, because entrepreneurship is not for the calm people and people that are quiet. You have to be bold. You have to get yourself out there. You have to, explain what you do, give people a business card when they're talking to you. But I think my 20-year-old self, I would just say, be bold, step out there. Once in a while, it's going to be uncomfortable, but step out there. If it's really uncomfortable, you're going to step back into your comfort zone. Yeah. But you learn a lot when you're out of your comfort zone too.
So true. It's totally been my experience as well. It's relationships, right? And relationships are messy, even in business. You're going to face a lot of uncomfortable circumstances, uncomfortable situations. People are going to say things that you're not sure how to respond to. Yes. You want to believe that you're going to go in with the utmost confidence every single time. But the truth is, even if you have a bad day, like sometimes it kind of messes with that a little bit. And so getting, like you said, out of that comfort zone and doing it anyway and learning from it so that you can grow and improve, and not just the relationship, but even within ourselves, so that we become better at doing what it is that we do. And that's what I hear you say when you're talking about the boldness.
And stepping out in faith, as we as Christians think about, stepping out. It might not be comfortable, but if you step out there, what do they say? God will work with you where you're at, but he'll also work with you when you step out in faith, that it shows that you're relying on him much more.
Yeah.
And that's so hard for a lot of us, especially myself. I mean, just stepping out there and just letting God lead.
Yeah.
You don't have control. God is going to
Mm.
be in control for us.
That's
So
right.
that's hard.
Amen. And he is. He always is. And sometimes that is just the hardest thing to trust and believe.
Yes, yes.
But I also think too, like boldness is a lot of times saying what needs to be said, even though it's not hard or not easy to do,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
that
yes.
happens to be one of my top values. And interestingly, my last episode, I talked about authenticity. Maybe it was the
Okay.
last one. And that's another one, but boldness. I find myself inspired by those who are the bold speakers out there, the ones who are willing
Yes.
to say and do what needs to be said and done, even though it's scary, even though they're not sure how it'll be received, but they speak for something that's just and something that's good and something that supports and builds other people up. And, sometimes that doesn't jive, right, when we have to do
Mm-hmm.
it. So I appreciate you saying that, Kim. So final question, how can folks reach you? Getting an announcement.
Reach you, especially.
That's okay. I will edit that part out. So how can folks reach you and for what specific services?
So my webpage is www.ergonomicsandyou.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I am on. I have a YouTube channel that I have a handful of YouTube videos up there, so you can reach me. Also with my email, and it's my name, so K Granata-Clark, no hyphen, at ergonomicsandyou.com.
Awesome. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you, Kim. Thanks for showing up and sharing your wisdom with us. And for those listening, remember to lead well, live on purpose, and honor God with your life. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, David.